Okay, it is 6:30. I'd like to call to order the sixth regular meeting of the Board of Directors of School Admin District 52 for the 2022-23 board year. And I have the Pledge of Allegiance today. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Slide that.
We will act on the minutes of the fifth regular meeting on October 20th, 2022. Any omissions, errors? Agree on general consensus? Moving on to public comments. So I'm going to read from our public participation board meeting policy DEBH. Bear with me, it's long. MSAD 52 Board of Directors meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the official business of the school system. All regular, special, and emergency meetings of the board are open to the public. The public is cordially invited to attend and to participate in board meetings as provided in this policy. This policy applies only to meetings of the full board, not to meetings of board subcommittees. Although board meetings are not public forums, the board will provide appropriate opportunities for members of the public to express opinions and concerns related to the matters concerning education and MSAD 52 schools. The intent is to allow a fair and adequate opportunity for the public to be heard while ensuring that the time allowed for public discussion does not interfere with the fulfillment of the scheduled agenda. The board will designate a portion of its agenda as an opportunity for public participation. During the time allotted for public participation, members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the school, except for personal matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, which shall be addressed through the established policies and procedures. Members of the public may address the board within guidelines provided in this policy. The chair shall be responsible for maintaining proper order and compliance with these guidelines. The following guidelines shall apply to public participation at board meetings. A. Citizens and employees of the school unit are welcome to participate as provided in this policy. Others may be recognized to speak at the chair's discretion. Individual employees and/or employee groups will not be permitted to discuss matters for which complaint or grievance procedures are provided. B. The chair may limit the time allotted for comments on a particular topic, as well as the time each individual may speak. C. In the event of a sizable audience, the chair may require persons interested in speaking to sign up so they may be called on in a fair and efficient manner. D. During the time set aside for public participation, the chair will be responsible for recognizing all speakers who must identify themselves as they begin talking. That's the second page. E. Speakers are not permitted to share gossip, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. F, all speakers are to address the chair and direct questions or comments to particular board members or the superintendent only with approval of the chair. Requests for information or concerns that require further research may be referred to the superintendent to be addressed at a later time. G, members of the board and the superintendent may ask questions of any person who addresses the board, but are expected to refrain from arguing or debating issues. Questions must be addressed through the chair. H, no complaints or allegations will be allowed at board meetings concerning any person employed by the school system or against particular students. Personnel matters or personal matters or complaints concerning students or staff issues will not be considered in a public meeting, but will be referred to established policies and procedures. I, in order to make efficient use of meeting time, the board discourages duplication or repetition of comments to the board. The board requests that groups or organizations be represented by designated spokespersons. J, the chair has the authority to stop any presentation that violates these guidelines or the privacy rights of others. K, persons who disrupt the meetings may be asked to leave, and the chair may request law enforcement assistance if necessary to restore order. An agenda shall be published in advance of each meeting in accordance with board policy. Copies will be posted and/or available prior to regular meetings in town offices, the superintendent's office, or on MSAD 52's website. Anyone desiring additional information about an agenda item should direct such inquiries to the office of the superintendent. Opportunity for public participation at board subcommittee meetings and special board meetings is not required, but may be permitted in accordance with the board's policy and/or rules pertaining to the operations of subcommittees. Do we have anybody who would like to participate in public comment? So just state your name, please, for the record.
Crystal Nicholas from Green. Earlier in 2022, staff at Turner Elementary were given professional development materials that direct them in part to act against school policy GBEBB, staff conduct with students. On page 10 of LGBTQ inclusion, becoming an ally in education, staff are to commit to finding resources and learning together with a child who has revealed information about their sexuality. However, not only does policy GBEBB prohibit singling out a particular student for personal attention beyond the normal teacher-student relationship, but it also states that talking to a child about their sexuality falls under unacceptable conduct. Non-guidance counseling staff shall not encourage students to confide their personal or family problems and/or relationships. If a student initiates such discussions, staff are expected to be supportive but refer student to appropriate counseling staff. Policy on this point is unambiguous. Teachers are to refrain from learning together with anyone about any child's sexuality anytime. We need to amend policy to give clear guidance that administrators shall not use our tax resources to hire advocates for professional development who distribute arbitrary propaganda undocumented by data. Note that this advocate builds their pedagogy in part on the claim of self-reported mental distress found in surveys such as the anonymous Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey on page 16 of such materials. Find that. But on page 19 informs us that LGBTQ youth are less likely to answer questionnaires or assessments honestly. These materials are not intended to achieve learning results. They are evidence of a well-funded social engineering experiment promoted by activists and advocates who proclaim that to criticize their weaponized empathy creates an unsafe environment. Policy GBEBB outlines that violations of policy are to be reported. I hereby report that to follow many of these suggestions is to engage in unacceptable conduct. Faced with reviewing these contradictions, will the board continue to use funding to foster inappropriate conversations, or will it align development to conform with an existing policy? I recall a guest speaker at our very first meeting who did advise adhering to the policy. Unless policy is meant to be followed only when politically convenient and only by select individuals. As Orwell writes, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Rules for thee, but not for me.
And I did forget to admit that we do have a 3-minute policy. I just want to make sure that I can say that out loud. Thank you very much.
I'm Christine Duplessis, I Chief Kids in the district. I came several meetings ago and was shut down from reading some concerning material. And I feel violated that that happened because I should be able to come here and bring forth any concern. So I'm going to actually go ahead and read some excerpts from the concerning book.
So can I
Then-
remind us why we stopped that process?
I'm going to keep reading. I want it documented. Then you stood in front of me, fully erect, and said, "Taste it." At first, I laughed and refused. But then you said, "Come on, Matt, taste it. This is what boys like us do when we like each other." You began humping my back and forth. You got up off me and told me to come to the bathroom. You began stroking yourself in front of me. Then you began to moan slightly. You ejaculated into the toilet.
Okay, so we're going to adjourn the meeting now.
Point of order. I think that Ms. Duplessis is correct in that she has, by policy, a right to share what she has to say within the confines of this meeting.
So
This is based on,
So I'm going to ask Anthony. We have come to this before and we've talked about it, and our policy is we're going to follow our school board adopted policy, which is, and I believe that you're going through this process right now.
Ma'am, no, I'm not, because I was suggested that I would have to purchase these books, read them front to back in order to file an actual complaint. I'm not doing that.
If you have a problem with the policy as it states.
I was deterred from filing my complaint, ma'am. Okay?
So I can only say that we are following the policy to the letter.
Well, I'm not reading those books. I'm not buying them. So we're going to go back and forth here. I'm not buying the books.
So we're not going to debate this, okay?
Okay, do you want me to continue reading?
We
People don't realize what's in this stuff. And you guys shut us down and it's disgusting. You guys are allowing this to happen. You're groomers and perverts.
We are adjourned and we're going to.
Disgusting perverts.
You can't shut down an entire meeting from public comment. If it's not appropriate for a school meeting, then why can't,
It's in the school, but we can't talk
why
about
is it
it here.
okay for it to be school or kids?
So I'm going to call to order the fifth regular meeting for the second time. I'd like to continue with public comment because I think it's a really important part of this process. I am asking you guys all to please follow along with our policies and procedures. We have a big agenda to do tonight, and we really want to move on with it after this point too, okay? So I'm going to move on to the next in line.
Okay.
Okay? Is there anybody else that would like to have public comment? Jimmy, go ahead.
So here's the thing with that stuff, is that these type of books and the stuff that's in these books don't just stay with maybe the older kid that maybe thinks they need to learn about that stuff. Everybody rides the school bus together. You know, there's younger siblings in the house with these older siblings, and when they see these books or these pictures, you know, a little kid could walk in on it, they have eyes and ears, or there's somebody on the bus could just say, make a joke and show the bus, you know, these pictures and these stuff that's in this book, they could talk about it. It could lead to bullying, you know, and it does in different states. Maybe not in our school, it is in different states. You know, people are killing themselves because they're getting bullied over stuff like this. So it's you know, to me, as adults, we can't talk about, can't discuss it as adults here. Why can anything like that be in the eyes and ears of our young children? You know, I don't understand. I mean, you know, it's, like I said, they ride the bus, and you know, and when they see this stuff, you know, what if they get that tingly feeling and they do something and say they molest or do something to somebody younger because of what they see and what they're hearing? Like, we need to protect these kids. I have two little boys, and after, because Miss Harris is such a good principal, my kid stops at 6th grade. He's not going to 7th grade yet. I'm going to have to homeschool him, and that's killing me. It's killing me. Because it ain't right. My daughter's 25. She graduated from this school. Okay? I have a lot of tax money that's gone to this school for all these years. 4 generations in this district gone to this stuff. All we ask is we don't want pornography in the books in the schools. And I ask this, and we just you look into it. This is not saving lives. It's not saving lives having this stuff. It's not saving lives. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And if this right here, if anybody here thinks that this should be in these schools for these young kids to see, it breaks my heart, man. This is disgusting. And I know you guys are better people than that. I know you are. We don't want to ban books, but this shouldn't be in the eyes of kids where they can sit, the little kids can see it. And what if it causes some other kid to molest somebody because they want to try this? Or a friend sleeps over and says, hey, I saw this in the book, let's try it. You know what I mean? This stuff shouldn't be in our schools. And I beg you to do something. Just take this crap out. You know? I beg you. Please, have a meeting and do something with it. Please.
Is there anybody who'd like to speak who hasn't yet?
I just have a question.
Sure.
When Ms. Duplessis read, what policy did she violate?
So there was a precedent that happened in another board meeting that I'm following up on. So I can't speak to that specific policy right now, but I can get back to you on that.
Well, I did read the challenge forms.
So I'm not going to debate, so I'm just giving you that response for now, okay?
Okay, it wasn't a debate, it was a question.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other public comment? Moving on, any adjustments to the agenda?
No, but I have communications.
Oh, excuse me, communications.
So we have a couple of resignations. Kathy Beckel, Tripp Middle School Foreign Language Teacher, effective 11/25.
Yeah.
And Sadie Dimon, Special Education at Tech 3 at Green, effective 11/25, same day. Retirement to report, Robert Wilcox, who's from Leeds Central School, Title I at Tech 3, effective January 6th. A resignation due to a transfer, so Paula Coyne moved from van driver to substitute van driver. We have filled positions. So we have all 3 of our ed instructors now hired and in place, so they are fully staffed. We have hired 3 custodians since our last meeting. We have had 4 new substitute teachers start since our last meeting. And Amy Pelletier has 3 more to meet with who have put applications in. So those things all are positive news.
Fantastic. This does pretty worked last time. And then adjustment to the agenda. No adjustments. Committee reports. Finance committee, what do they have today?
Yes, we have this evening. Gabby is also going to be speaking a little bit further on down the line, so she'll have a lot more information. I'll just kind of touch on what we spoke of this evening. Mr. Roberts came to speak to us about some proposed food service staffing adjustments. We need about 4 hours district-wide increase, which does not impact the general fund. It comes from our revenues through food service. And that's just, the justification was because we've had an increase in the amount of children taking free lunch and breakfast. So we need more help with prep, service, sanitation, and inventory. We also spoke on the special education fiscal year 22 seed revenue expenses, and seed revenue is our special ed IEP programs. There was just some documentation that is now being properly documented and where Gabby has to put all of those things. We reviewed our September 22 financial reports. 23, sorry. Yes, you're right.
So you're 7.
Sorry. And let's see, what else did we talk about? Liability insurance bidding. Were you touching on that later or no? Not that, that one's not later. That is something that has to go out to bid every 5 years. And currently we have MSMA doing that for us. They send out bids so we get the best rates. We talked about homeless and out-of-district transportation salaries, which I know Gabby will be speaking on that in a little bit, so I'll save that. We have another item on the agenda about the van that was totaled in early 22 and the replacement, which we will be discussing before we vote on. And the minimum wage increase, which is effective as of January 1st. The state is increasing minimum wage to $13.80, so our substitute rates for food service assistants and specialists will be impacted, but there's no impact to the budget, again, because it's in food service. And we reviewed and signed payroll and accounts payable warrants. It sounds like a lot, but it went by really quick.
Thank you. Curriculum and Policy Committee. Looks like next meeting is December 8th, 5:30 at GCS. Okay. Student representative report, Mela tonight.
The curriculum committee will be December 8th as well.
The plant transportation code.
Right, but curriculum also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we had the school dance since the last meeting, which was really successful in terms of like overall like happiness about having to dance, and then also in like participation, but also excuse me, raise a lot of money. Then we also have this like pumpkin decorating contest where like each HBT was given a pumpkin that they like decorated. And that went really well. We got really good feedback on that. And then we are doing a food drive right now. And and student council is looking at the cell phone policy. That's about it.
The winning pumpkin was like,
Okay, there was like different categories. So it wasn't just like one overall winner.
The other ones.
There was? What? I watched Buzz Media. Which pumpkin won?
Well, there were several categories, but the overall best pumpkin was my HPT.
Well, I apologize.
Which one was it?
It was an ET pumpkin.
Oh, I heard about that being really good.
That was one of my favorites. Loved that one.
Thank you, Mela.
Mhm.
Administrator reports. I'm going to start with Danielle.
Are there any questions for Danielle? And then if you want to just add anything and highlight something. Questions?
most of my report was about the professional development that we have going on. Right now, my teacher's focus this week and next week is on the parent-teacher conferences. They're really looking forward to meeting with parents and going over the progress that the kids have made in the first quarter.
Thank you. Kimberly Fuller, any questions for her report? Any highlights you want to share?
Well, then we're gearing up for preparing for parent-teacher conferences, which we're all looking forward to. And I guess one of the highlights is we had a fabulous Halloween parade, and we had a lot of families able to attend. We were outside in the bus circle, and it was really well received. And we had donations of pumpkins. You may have seen them as you walked in from River Hill, so that the kids had a lot of fun with that. So good community connection.
Excellent. Principal Mates, any highlights for us?
Yeah, I did have a couple of highlights that actually happened at the beginning of November, so I hadn't included them in my report. But last week we sent 61 students to the Maine Youth Day Leadership Conference at the Hyatt School in Bath. So we're trying to increase our student leadership at the middle school, so each crew has 2 student representatives. And we're trying to increase the professional development for them on how to have a powerful student voice within the building. And so there's about 1,300 students from 6-12 across Maine. So I think just sheer numbers and size made it a really incredible day for the kids. They came back, they had a lot of great feedback, and so they're now sharing that within their crews. And then today we were able to start back up the Veterans Day Assembly that's been a tradition at the middle school. And so it was the first time as the principal of the middle school I got to participate in that. It was pretty powerful, and the social studies staff and student leadership team did a really great job pulling that off today. So those are 2 really positive things in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you for including that again. I've had a couple of kids come through the middle school, and it's always been a highlight for them. Brody was really excited to do that today, even though we thought it was only a half day of school.
We ran a half-day schedule because the second half of the day was the Veterans Day recognition, and so yes, a lot of middle school students felt like they were duped on on the half day. But
No, he said it was a great day.
yeah, it was
Thank
a great day.
you. Principal Shaw?
Yeah, I think Mela undersold the dance a little bit. Yes, the overall happiness was pretty high, but we had more than half of our students attended the dance on the 22nd of October, which is a remarkable turnout. So it was a very, very good community building event at school. And I put this in my notes, but I want to shout out to Angela Corchesney in our JMG program. We had a career/college fair last week in the gym, and she had over 50 folks representing careers and school and military, and we had a lot of students that ran through there. We had some students from some neighboring schools that came in as well, and it was very well received. And so we had done it last year, but this was substantially bigger, so it was very well done. We will also be hosting our annual craft fair on Saturday, back inside. Last year we were in the parking lot. We were fortunate we had a non-rainy day this year. Whatever it can rain, it's inside, so we're back inside. Our ERV kids, Exploring River Valley kids, Mr. Gray has had them in the community doing some community service over the last couple of weeks. They've been raking a lot of leaves and work that's very much appreciated in the community. And last but not least, regional final football game. We are playing that on Saturday at 6 o'clock at Lewiston High School.
Thank you.
What is ERV, Evan?
Exploring River Valley.
Thank you. Item 6.6, Assistant Superintendent Report.
Yes. So Principal Mates mentioned the Veterans Day Assembly that happened earlier today, and it was great. I was invited and able to attend, and I want to thank Mary Leonard, who I know did a ton of work to put the assembly together and bring it to fruition. So thank you, Mary. And Janet's right, it was very powerful, so I'm glad to see that that's back again. Since my last report, I have met with the network leaders at Levitt to catch up on the curriculum work that they have been doing with their departments. These discussions have given me insight into the work that already has been done and needs to still be done to complete our curriculum work that we have a plan for over the next 3 years. I want to give special thanks to Iva Damon, Emily DeSantes, Mike Hathaway, Isaiah Davis, and Caroline Labrie for their willingness to work with me and also with the K-8 teachers to support the vertical work that will be necessary as we create a cohesive curriculum. I also met with the middle school social studies teachers and our grade 6 grade level leader to discuss social studies in grades 6 through 8. Our state standards band grades 6 to 8 together. And it just provides some unique opportunities for us because we do not have a 6 to 8 school. So during this meeting, we had a presentation from the DBQ project, and we will be looking into this more as a curriculum resource. The DBQ website addresses their work in this way. Document-based questions are authentic assessments. Evidence-based argument, both spoken and written, is a necessary life skill. This is the primary focus of the DBQ project. Students who do DBQs find meaning amidst an array of information. In real life, whenever we decide, whether we are deciding how to vote, what to buy, or how to spend our time, we answer questions by looking at diffuse evidence and deciding what it means. Our DBQs and mini-Qs are structured to allow students at all levels to practice answering engaging historical questions. And as they use this evidence to support their arguments, students are practicing skills that will last them a lifetime. 2 of the current teachers at the middle school have used DBQs previously and have found that students are truly engaged in their learning. And I know that high school teachers have reported the same, although they had not utilized the DBQ project. As we complete curriculum work, we will be looking at these materials as well as other materials that we need to fulfill our implementation. And that's what I have for this evening.
Thank you. 6.7, Superintendent Report.
So a couple of items. You all have received the same notifications that I've sent home to families around lead water testing, so I just wanted to address that. So we've gotten results from Turner Primary, Turner Elementary, Adult Ed's Central Office, and Green Central School. Green Central School was almost had no issues, same for Adult Ed, but Turner Primary and Turner Elementary were different. So I just wanted, there are 44 sinks or drinking fountains between the 2 schools that were above the state level of 4 parts per billion, and 18 tested above the federal level of 15 parts per billion. So there are 2 different thresholds for the testing. Federal level is 15, Maine has set it lower than that. A lot of those were sinks that, you know, mostly people aren't drinking from, but there were a number of fountains. And so the sinks have been have signage on them, drinking water, hand washing only, and the fountains that have above 4 or 15 have been shut down. I think what's different about this round of testing, we've been consistently testing the water for 7 years, or we have 7 years worth of data, but we've been doing it for longer than that, meeting the state requirement. The state changed the guidelines for testing this year, which is why this number is so much different, because now we're being asked to test every single source of water in the building, every sink, so it's just, I think we were caught off guard by how much was there. So in some ways it's good that they changed it because we were able to identify more of that. I'm going to ask Dave Coburn to come at the December 8th meeting to talk about sort of next steps. I will say he's communicated with a lot of other facilities managers and everybody's sort of in the same place. Everyone has responded in the same way by shutting off fountains and putting up signs. But really in much more need of guidance from the state about next steps, because I don't think anybody anticipated what the need would be and the costs of those things. So we've taken care of the immediate thing. The long-term solution is probably going to be a longer conversation.
Yeah.
The a team of principals at a team of teachers and the principal at every building, including Teresa and I, are participating in CSTAG training, which is Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guideline Training. It's a training being offered by the Department of Education School Safety Center. It's an evidence-based response to threats made by students. And the goal is violence prevention and intervention for kids who are struggling and kids who are threatening violence. It was developed by the University of Virginia, has gone through a lot of rigorous research. And it's training that I was aware of prior to coming here, but it wasn't being offered again. But the state recently received another large grant and is now bringing in another array of schools. So we think the training, which will allow teams within each building to sort of respond to those threats in a problem-solving manner, with the hope that we can solve the problem that led to the threat. It'll be an essential part of our safety training. I've also asked a sheriff within one of the deputies in the Metropolitan Sheriff Department to participate in that training with us so that he can be a resource. Like some of you, went to the Maine School Management Conference last week. Just a couple key takeaways from the keynote speaker, who I have also heard for a lot longer the day before, David Horsheimer, around trust. A couple of key takeaways: that building trust takes time, is done intentionally, requires preparation. Research indicates that people are highly motivated to work on projects and complete them if they have an opportunity to collaborate and work with others. And then a personal trait of gratitude is highly regarded, and so it was a good reminder to express that gratitude. And then the new superintendent training that I participated in was around negotiations, so which I know several of you also did that at Maine School Management. The Teacher Evaluation Revision Committee has kicked off. We've got a great team of teachers working with Janet and I, Elaine Gammon and Cheryl Woodard at TPS, Judith Flashman and Nicole Marcotte from the high school, Pam Warren from the middle school, Jen Groover and Lori Slovak from Leeds, and Nancy Ellis from Green. And the goal, as I've said before, would be to have a revised process to you guys. So on the topic of gratitude, I'd like to express and commend bus driver Elaine Tremaine for her professionalism and quick thinking. She had a student health emergency on her bus last week. She was incredibly professional, taking care of the student, calling for rescue, communicating quickly and clearly with Green Central School staff so that they could notify the parent and actually notify all the parents of the students on the bus that the bus was late, but it wasn't in an accident, so that they didn't worry. The student is okay and rescue attended, and so I just wanted to say out loud that we're very lucky to have a bus driver who is taking care of our kids and keeping them safe. She did a great job. And then last, one of our teachers won this awesome prize at a MADSAC special ed conference. Angela Wright Bouffard, who's a team leader, I think at the high school. She won $1,200 worth of training in a special ed reading comprehension program. So we're very excited about that. That's what I got.
Thank you. Moving on to old business.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, we don't typically questions all the way through. Was there any old business? No? Moving on to new business.
I'd like to welcome Jan Wegman here, who is working on our wastewater treatment plant redesign.
Thank you. I'll pass these around as copies of my presentation. I was asked to come to tonight to give you a brief overview. I know there's a lot of new board members, and also a brief history of the project. You probably are all aware of, this is a picture in the bottom here of the wastewater treatment plant that's next to the church across from the 11th Institute building across Henderson Road. But this facility, I'll get into it in a moment, is the one we're going to be talking about. Let's see if this works. So I'll give a brief history, tell you about some investigations we've been doing, some look at disposal field sites that we're looking at. We're also doing an evaluation of treatment plant options and what some of the next steps are. So a real brief and concise overview of the history. The current facility was built originally in 1969 as a package treatment plant. And it's been functioning. It's had several updates over time. In the late 2000 teens, I'll say, it's had numerous compliance issues with discharge limits for BOD, which is biological oxygen demand, TSS, which is total suspended solids, and E. coli bacteria. And the original plant was built with a direct discharge to the Zinska River. And so in 2019, based on the performance of the plant, the district commissioned a wastewater treatment facility study and evaluation, which our firm did. And we came up with, we evaluated a number of options, either trying to rehab that facility or looking at replacing it with a new package treatment plant. And then we also looked at options for what do we do with the wastewater? Do we keep on discharging it to the river, or do we put it in a subsurface disposal field? Since that time, in 2020, the district secured some funding and proceeded to look at implementing the recommended option that we had come up with, which was replacing the system with a subsurface disposal system, with a new package treatment plant and a subsurface disposal system. In 2021, we started conducting field investigations on potential subsurface disposal field sites. We also, this year, we also researched and put out RFPs for package treatment plants from several different manufacturers, and are proceeding looking at those and evaluating those. So just to give you a little bit of a background on the sewage treatment plant, that plant, this is an aerial photo. Center Bridge Road runs horizontally about 3/4 of the way up the picture there. This sewage treatment plant collects wastewater from Leavitt High School, the middle school, the primary school, the elementary school, and also several other. There's an apartment building on Turner Center Bridge Road, a private residence, and the church. Collects, so it's not only just the schools, but the school operates it because that's the primary driver here. And so that's the collection area. Some of the considerations that we have been considering in terms of evaluating and looking at replacement systems and how we approach this is currently the Maine DEP regulates OBDs, which are overboard discharges, which is the direct discharge to the river from the treated wastewater. And their goal is to eliminate these. So the permits that are required for this come up every 5 years, and one of the questions they ask is there any alternative to a direct discharge? Can you put this wastewater in the ground through a subsurface disposal system or something like that? And so that was part of the impetus of having us look at that to make sure that, see what that answer was. It's been looked at in the past, and it's been determined that no, we just don't really have it this time. But with new technology, things change over time. So the current discharge limit for the system is about 21,000 gallons a day, which is a fairly sizable amount. And also, we're also anticipating in the future that the regulatory environment could dictate additional requirements for phosphorus levels in addition to the BOD, TSS, E. coli, and there's some other parameters that they look at, which may require additional treatment. So one of the advantages of going to a subsurface disposal system is that it's regulated by DHHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, and it has a lot fewer requirements, a lot less testing requirement, or daily testing, and there's none of that. And it's a lot less testing intensive, and you don't have to you don't have to monitor your systems the same way. So as part of our evaluation, we looked at what the flows actually were, because the system currently has flow meters on it, so we can get a very accurate picture of the historical flows. And as you might imagine, they fluctuate quite a bit. And then we also looked at projecting that out over 20 years. What do we anticipate the growth to be? And we looked at some days the system can get as little as 550 gallons a day, and other times the system can get as much as 13,000 gallons a day. So our treatment options here would have to be capable of those swings and flows and being able to treat wastewater. Obviously, we're dealing, the treatment systems that we're looking at are biological treatment systems, so they're dependent on bugs and bacteria that take up some of the nutrients in the wastewater. So our preliminary study suggested that the most cost-effective solution over this 20-year lifespan that we looked at would be a new package treatment plant with a subsurface disposal system. Now, when we looked at these numbers initially, when we looked at what would it cost for a new treatment plant with a direct discharge and a new treatment plant with a subsurface disposal system, the cheapest initial cost would have been a new treatment plant with a discharge system to the river, continuing to use that. But it was more expensive to build the subsurface disposal system. But over time, because your operating costs are less, over that 20-year horizon, it was cheaper to look at pursue the subsurface disposal system. So what we had done is then initially we looked at the holdings of the school district, trying to look at comprehensively at what land area we have available to us for disposal systems. We identified 4 basic sites, and some of the identification criteria were just general soils maps, setbacks from waterways, setbacks from other wells in the area, and what other uses there might be that might impact where you can have this. And the 4 areas we looked at, and we did some soils investigations in the softball field adjacent to between the cemetery and the administration building, which was one of them. We looked at 2 areas in the wooded area behind the middle school, and then we also looked at the athletic fields at the high school. When we first looked at this, the only one that wasn't restricted by setbacks from other waterways and other restrictions and setbacks from wells was a window we found at the high school athletic field. So we did some follow-up soils investigations there and started to think about what that might look like. This was essentially taking the practice football field between the soccer and track and the actual playing field, and putting the disposal system there. This is just the leach field area in that location, but it would require us to build it up several feet. And then we also started to look at the hydrogeology, which is the study looking at how the groundwater moves in the area. And even though that area was 300 feet from the nearest well, which is the well that serves the high school, we felt that over time, the groundwater flow towards that area, which would be towards the river, could take residual effluent from that disposal field and direct it towards the high school. So then what we said is, that over time that may become problematic, and be a risk. So then we went back through and looked at the other sites. We looked at the site that's between the administration building and the cemetery, the softball field there, and looked harder at that site. That site is within 300 feet of the Mazinska River, so we initially ruled it out. We had some conversations with DHHS and DEP about granting waivers for could be viable. So what we're into now is we've started hydrogeological investigations this past late summer and fall, which is looking at the groundwater and what that groundwater in that area is doing. And it is flowing towards the river in general, so, which is where the current effluent goes now from the discharge from the treatment plant, so that should not be a problem. There are some things that we're finding is that the existing groundwater weeps out of there's a big slope between that field and the river. And at the base of that slope, there are several what we call weeps, which is where groundwater comes from the ground and weeps into the surface. And so we're trying to get our handle on what it would mean if we added an additional 13,000 gallons a day to that field up there. What would that look like at the base of that slope? Would it cause any other issues, such as pulling fines out of that soil or not? And I think what we're doing is we're trying to settle in whether or not that's a good location or not. And if it's not, then we may have to go back and say we're going to continue using the existing discharge, and we're going to just gear ourselves around that particular solution. So we're trying to run that down because in the long run, that's going to be a cheaper solution for the district. The other thing we've been working on recently is like I mentioned earlier, we had put out an RFP, a request for proposals, to 4 different packaged treatment plant manufacturers. We narrowed that down to 2, and we've been meeting with them and involving the district maintenance staff so that they can weigh in on what, from a maintenance perspective, what they'd like to see or what they think is manageable. Because essentially you've been running your own system now with a little bit of outside help occasionally. And these systems that we're looking at 2 in particular, here. One's called an amphidrome, and it has a particular name for the process. It's a submerged attached probe biological filter. So it sounds very sophisticated. And these systems, they are somewhat sophisticated. They all have somewhat of a black box where a lot of the treatment takes place. The other one's a BioClear. BioClear is a system that is fairly prevalent here in Maine. The Hanford over here in Turner has a BioClear system that pre-treats the wastewater before they discharge it. And the advantage of that is when you pre-treat it, you take the strength of the wastewater, the nutrients in it, and you knock it way down. You take about 95% of the nutrients out of it before you discharge it. So your leach field life or the life of your leach field is going to last much longer because it's much cleaner water going into it, and so forth. So these are the 2 systems that we're kind of narrowing in on. They're relatively close in price, so there's not a big price difference between them. We're looking at an operating cost as well, looking at those over time and making sure that decision that will factor in that, will factor in the maintenance responsibilities, and a whole host of other issues. So we're trying to evaluate those. Either of these systems would work for either a subsurface discharge or a direct discharge to the river. So whatever system we decide on would be able to be used in either one of those applications. So the next steps, at this point, we want to complete our hydrogeological investigations of the softball field site, I'll call it. And we're going to determine the feasibility of the admin disposal on that softball disposal field site. We'll select a treatment plant, treatment plant and a site. Now, one of the things that I mentioned the site here specifically is we had looked at putting the treatment plant adjacent to the existing one. It's a relatively small lot, and these things are they're relatively small footprints, but in order to get them in logistically, you have to dig holes that are 15 feet deep in this very small site, and so it may be expensive to do that and then we thought, why constrain ourselves and move it to the softball field site, put this treatment plant at the softball field site. And then either have a disposal field there or connect back into the existing discharge pipe. So those are decisions that are coming up. We'll have to design the system, the site, all the pipe connections, how it's all going to go together. One thing that we are going to try and do is we're going to connect the admin building, which is currently on its own septic system behind the building, into this treatment plant as well. Design disposal fields or wherever we go with that. And we also amend the DEP site location. There's a site location permit for the overall campus. We'll have to amend that as well as the discharge permit. These are changing technologies. We'll complete the system design, bid the project, and then construct the system. And I put together a brief overview of the schedule. Again, I ran out of paper on the right-hand side, so it's already gone, but I do have a completion date of the entire project of June 2023. So that's the brief. I didn't want to run this, I know there's a lot of other items in this meeting, so if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take some questions. Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving along, Gabby's presentation. It's a presentation on district finances by our business manager, Gabby Kroll.
It's just going to be a brief overview of some items that I found from previous fiscal years and how we're working on them moving forward to ensure that similar mistakes aren't made. I know for fiscal year 22, I know that I previously discussed that grant billing was behind, dating back to the end of fiscal year 21. I've been working on catching up all of the grant billing, and I believe I have one more invoice for fiscal year 21, which should be put out by the end of next week. And moving forward, I will be implementing a quarterly schedule where the grants will be billed within 30 days of the end of the quarter. That is a ways away. I still have a lot of catching up to do for all of fiscal year 22, but that's my plan. I also found that some grant revenue was posted to the incorrect grants. I was able to catch the errors and move it to the correct grant so that it's appropriately posted in our system. Moving forward, what I do now is after I invoice the grant and I see that it's been approved, I print out a copy of that and I code it for Sally, who's accounts payable, and post the receipts so that she knows exactly where it goes. There's no room for error there. In review of some transportation expenses, we found that some out-of-district and homeless expenses were not appropriately charged in our system, in our financial system. So some expenses needed to be reallocated to match the mileage and charges associated with the homeless students being served for the year. To address this issue, the Transportation Department now has attendance sheets that the drivers fill out associated with the dates that the students attend the school. In addition to that, the transportation supervisor is monitoring the timesheets to make sure that she codes them properly, so any transportation associated with homeless or out of district are coded specifically for that type of transportation. The first week that I started, 2 copiers were delivered and installed at Tripp Middle School. And then our A copy representative appeared in my office with an invoice. We didn't know anything about this at the time in the business office. So we're making sure that now, moving forward, we get bids for the equipment, we get financing options, we address it with the finance committee, and then we order the equipment and have it installed before, going backwards. I'm happy to report that all of the fiscal year 22 audit requested materials have been uploaded to the auditor's system. Our audit is scheduled for the week of November 28th. It will be physically on site with us on the Tuesday and Wednesday of that week. We're very excited. For fiscal year 23, we did find that the budget that was approved by the district was not what was being reported to the state. So every year you have to upload all of your budget documents to the state so they can review them, ensure that they match up with what was approved, and then they approve them. You also have to do quarterly reporting, upload all of your expenses and revenues to them so that they can make sure that everything is in line with what they're expecting. So they did reject it because it didn't match what was approved. I found that some of the expense types within the warrant articles were not actually included with what was approved in the budget process. So we found them and corrected them. Unfortunately, though, an example of this is a $9,000 expense or budget line for the high school's alternative education. The amount had to be removed from our budget because it wasn't approved. And after we updated all of these expenses, our budget has now been approved by the state. So there's no issue, it's just that there was an issue that affected the schools. I did go through all of the different warrant article items to ensure that they're now coded properly, and there shouldn't be an issue with this moving forward. I also found that there were items in the balance sheet that need to be reviewed and addressed. I haven't had an opportunity to dive into each one of them, but I did find that there is a balance of $277,000 that's still showing in a Maine municipal bond bank account. It's an amount that's associated with the Siemens Phase 2 project. That included the chiller and pump replacement at the high school, the wood chip bunker, a unit ventilator replacement at TES, a gym and cafe redesign at TES, and kitchen equipment replacement at TMS. Within this project, I was able to identify several expenses that were paid out of the general fund. I did speak with the auditors on how to handle this, and I will need to process a transfer to move the money from the Maine Municipal Bond Bank account to the general fund to correct it. We discussed in the Finance Committee earlier today, and it was actually on the board agenda last meeting, but was removed. The total ban for the Transportation Department, we were originally going to recommend not replacing it and just taking the cash, depositing it into the general fund for use in next year's budget. But after discussing with the adjuster, I found that benefit of having our insurance through MSMA is there's a replacement value. So as long as the van is 10 years or younger, they give you a full replacement value. So the transportation director and I discussed it along with Carrie, and we determined that the best method to handle this was to get the new van and then sell an older van so we have better equipment. We're recommending that we purchase the van from Lee. It was the most cost-effective van. Unfortunately, we don't know when it'll be in stock because of the supply chain issues, but Lee promises us that the price will not increase. A big issue also is contracts. We want to make sure that moving forward, we review contracts that are coming up. We get bids for those contracts to ensure that the best option is chosen for the district. And we do believe now that we're in a good place that we can provide regular fiscal year 23 budget updates to the Finance Committee. For fiscal year 24, we've already begun the budget process. We met with all of the administrators at the beginning of this week to start our process. We're very excited. That's all that I have. Any questions?
No, that was a lot though. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
So I
ahead,
just
Jeff.
wanted to add that Gabby's very new to this job, and I think what she just summarized, a lot of things we've talked about on the Finance Committee in more detail, and I think we're very lucky to have you and the attention to detail that you have, and thank you for coming on board.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I just want you to maybe elaborate a little bit more on the fiscal year 23 budget error that was done, just because I worry that people might not understand exactly what you mean and think that the warrant article wasn't applied correctly. But the budget that the public voted on is what is being...
Yes, that is the guideline that we're following. That is what has been input into our system properly.
Okay.
So I don't know how to explain it in any other terms, so I'm going to try. Each expense is associated with a project code.
Mm-hmm.
Each project code has to be grouped to a warrant article.
Yep.
It has to be done manually by whoever creates this project code, and usually that's the business manager.
Gotcha.
If it's not grouped to the warrant article, then it doesn't appear in the printouts that we provide you to approve and sign off on. We found that some of those expenses weren't included in those groupings. Therefore, you didn't approve them. And when I printed out the information from our system to upload to the state, there were expense lines in there that weren't included in the approved budget. I had to find them, which was tedious because I had to go through each and every expense to find out where it was grouped.
Gotcha.
We found them, we removed them, and the budget that we are using is what has been approved by the district.
Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying.
No problem.
And I will just add, the first time that Deb Roberts came down to work with Gabby, my first question was, we need to make sure that the budget matches what was approved by the voters. Like, that was the first task. Because I was with a missing business manager for a month and a half, I wasn't able to verify that. So it was absolutely like the first order of business.
Perfect.
Any other questions for Gabby? Thank you. Item 8.3, report of school board members' attendance at the MSBA Fall Conference. So we had quite a few people who attended. So if we want to just go in order, Tammy, do you want to give a quick rundown of what you might have attended or what you learned?
I don't know if it will be real quick. I tried to follow the superintendent's directions.
It's a suggestion.
But that's what I used in my classroom, so.
There you go.
So basically there were 3 prompts that we were asked to respond to. And the first one was, what did I learn? So I tried to narrow it down. The first thing I learned is the more information that I get in being a board member, the less I really know, and that's just the truth. However, I do plan, one of the things I walked away with is I do plan to refer to our mission and vision statements and use that as a roadmap when I've been asked to make some decisions. So that was one of the things that I've learned. The second thing is my awareness keeps increasing about the direct impact that the federal and state laws, and I think this is really important, that I try to get my head around. The federal and state laws play on our policies. It's huge. So when we're asked to look at and change policy, we have to remember that there's federal and state policies, whether we like them or not, and that's why voting is so important and who we have getting into offices. So I remember as a busy teacher and parent and citizen that sometimes we don't pay attention to the impact until it affects us directly and we don't like something. And I feel in my 40 years as an adult that the local control has lessened. And that was definitely something that I really that was a real aha for me from this conference. But another thing I've learned though is to continue to ask how we can do things and how we can do it better. How do we turn our ideas into action? And then once we sort of determine some of those hows, it gives us hope and a way to implement that action. So those are some of the things that I've learned. The second prompt that I was given is some interesting ideas, things, or speakers that I had access to. One of the things that was I thought really cool was there is a Maine teacher residency program that is trying to incorporate a way to keep our teachers teaching, because right now there's about a 1/3 replacement of our public school teachers, and I know that administrators are even higher. So we're losing a lot of people. And our experienced teachers, a lot of them are considering leaving too. And I think we really have to pay attention to that. And I think there's lots of reasons the culture has changed. I've got to be careful. I'll get into my... But we want to keep good teachers, and we want to make sure that young people are getting mentored, and the older, more experienced teachers have that. It's a very powerful two-way thing. So that was a really good program that I think is worth looking into and addressing the shortage. The second really interesting thing for me was the keynote speaker, David Horsager. I don't know if that's how you say it. I thought he was one of the most exceptional speakers I've heard in a very, very long time. He does podcasts. Please listen to him. And his message is everything of value is built on trust. And I think that is a powerful thing for us all to really embrace, because I feel like there's a little bit of shaking in that area. And then finally, the third thing that she asked us to do is, what's the takeaway? What do you want to work on as a board member? And for me, it was the how, from the trust talk that David gave. My first one is, how do we build trust in our MSAD 52 district? How do we stay on course consistently with the vision and the mission that really does put students first? And how are we going to keep our focus clear on the essential skills and learning goals that we have here? And how do we train and equip our caring teachers and administrators with practice so they can competently instruct our kids? So I know that's a lot, but there was a lot there. This is just skimming the surface. So thank you for listening to me.
Nice work. Thank you for going, Tammy. Let's see, let's hear from Jamie.
Well, I feel like I didn't follow
Here's a Jeff. I gave them an exit ticket, all right?
Yeah, no, I didn't do that.
It's okay.
It was a great suggestion, but I just
Challenge
kind of,
by choice.
I'm just
It's all
gonna
okay.
wing it, okay?
Go for it.
So I attended a bunch of them, but I kind of wrote down the ones that I found the most interesting for the board. The first one I attended was about special education in Maine, and it was just kind of a brief overview of all of the changes that are occurring in special ed over the past year. The biggest takeaway from that is that there's like thousands of ed tech and support staff vacancies across the state, and that has a major impact on the special ed department mostly. This was the woman speaking was part of the Maine Administration of Services for Children with Disabilities, and they conducted a study. They found that the #1 stressor that special ed teachers continue to mention that is greatly affecting retention across the state is the paperwork load. And so they proposed considering the possibility of hiring IEP writers, maybe ed techs or admin assistants, to increase retention of special educators. So that was kind of their proposal in that, and I thought the board, it's something we may consider if we continue having staff shortages. The other one I went to is counseling school boards in divisive times, which was really, really good. That was Drummond and Woodson, and we mostly spent the time talking about FOIA requests and the burden that's being put on administrative time and cost to the district labor. Some of the districts there mentioned that they have had to increase their legal budgets to meet these demands, so with budget season coming up, we might want to consider that. That was the big one. And then I went to collective bargaining, just like you guys did. That was by Drummond and Woodson as well. And so these are the new laws that they said that we really needed to consider during budget season, during negotiations. There's a new status quo. This is that step increases are still enforced even if contracts have expired for the teachers. So that's a new one this year. Teacher prep time and transfers are now permissive in bargaining. Earned paid leave can now be subject to the grievance process, which it hasn't been in the past. And they've removed the 6-month waiting period for non-teachers. So when looking at contracts, that's just something to consider. And then the biggest thing that they said that, meant a lot to me was to remember that the cost of hiring a new employee is 2 to 3 times the cost of maintaining a current one. So that mattered. And then I saw Steve Bailey do the board leadership, and kind of all the boards came together on that one and talked about things that they do as a board that they find really helpful. And there were a few that I thought mentioning here. Some of them set aside 1 hour each month on the agenda for professional development of the board. They do a tour of all the schools every year for the academic areas, and then sometimes, I don't know if the facility and the Plants Transportation Facility does a facility tour once a year, but theirs does, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And then once per month, they set aside an executive session to check in with their superintendent to see what they need from the board that can make their job better and easier. So that was interesting. And those were my big takeaways.
Thank you. Anthony.
So I went to 8 presentations over 2 days. It was a dizzying amount of information, but none so dizzying as attending Understanding the Ed 279 report, which gives me a huge dose of humility with regard to coding and finance. So this is an exceptionally important report that allows schools to tap into monies that are available, but they are available only if, based on your count of students who are eligible for subsidized lunches. So an accurate report of that can be huge amounts of money. Accurate reporting of the various costs associated with special education not reporting that properly can easily add up to over $1 million of lost revenue. So thank you for attending to these things for us.
So timely.
I don't have to. I thought, for me, like Tammy said, the keynote speaker was very good. The focus on building trust was, I think, exceptional. But I found it ironic that in some of the presentations that I attended, like one of them that dealt with surviving public complaints, the attitude of many, both in the audience and seemingly some of the presenters, seemed to be that public complaint was a problem rather than an opportunity to build trust. And so I mentioned that during comment and questions, and I just bring that here, that we have an opportunity for public comment, and it is an opportunity for us and for the public to get to know each other better, even though we are constrained by our policies for not discussing things without a motion on the table. Nonetheless, I think it's really important to not assume that a complaint is an attack, and that a complaint, I think, can be seen as an attempt to make things better. So I also attended Hot Topics in Litigation. I wish that I had been able to share this before public comment. The advice or the opinion of our Drummond and Woodsum is that First Amendment lawsuits and civil rights challenges will be on the rise. And we spoke specifically about silencing public comment. So if there is a way for us to invite Mrs. Duplessis back to offer her comments, it may be a good idea. So that's my report.
And I know Betsy attended and sent something.
She sent me a short email, so I'll just read it. She went to the Student Learning and Workforce Development Pre-K to 12 CTE, which is technical education, strategic planning, and expanding student voice via a superintendent student advisory council. All of those included intentional connections between people and content and work with clearly articulated goals. Concepts presented in embedding CTE throughout pre-K-12 learning, as well as additional resources through jobs for Maine graduates and extended learning opportunities are worthy of further exploration for the district. Moving forward, developing specific action steps to improve clarity and connection to the community and the board's activities rise to the top of various speakers' imparted wisdom. So some similar themes.
Thank you. And item 8.4, instructional nominations.
So we did this back in August and September, but we haven't really been able to hire anybody for a while, so my God. Do I just review, I review each one and then you guys do it as a full
As a
motion?
collective,
Okay,
yeah.
so we had a computer teacher, so I provided the board a little bit of a heads up, so let me just share it out loud here. This is a teacher that we actually were able to bring hire, sort of have them accept the job offer back in August. And she was a teacher who was under contract in another district, so she was not going to be able to start until October. And in all of the hiring that we did in August and early September, she got lost in the shuffle. So she did not come to you guys in a timely manner when she should have come back in August. And I'm going to shout out to Martha Bilodeau, who is the person who caught it a couple weeks ago. So Kristen Davis, who is now on board and has been teaching since October 7th. She, by all accounts, has had a great start here, but she is coming to the board at this time with her effective date October 7th because of that reason. So I apologize to the board for that error that I made. We are hiring a teacher for Green Central School for first grade, Beth Brown. Doug and I agreed to make this a one-year position since it started late into the year so that we would be able to look at the class numbers at the end of the year to determine what the best thing was. So Beth Brown has already been working in the classroom as a long-term sub, and things are going well by all accounts. I met with her yesterday, and she's really excited to be starting. So, and then our third one, Intay, 3 o'clock, hot off the presses, an occupational therapist. It's like a unicorn out there, people. This is our third one. The other two we offered and they declined. So this one actually, as Rebecca said, this may actually be the favorite. So it may have all worked out for the right reasons. So she is moving here, will be moving here from MDI. She currently lives in the MDI area and will be moving to the area. And she hopes to start in December, middle of December. So very excited about that.
Fantastic. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Did you get a second? Was there a second?
There was.
Kyle,
Oh, sorry. Couldn't hear you.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, it was just a nod. Okay. I was like, uh-oh. Gabby, I'm getting your double ear infection. I couldn't hear it.
And 8.5, consideration of approval for a $300 donation to Green Central School. Motion to approve. Is there a second? Kyle?
Take the money.
All those in favor? (8.6) Discussion and approval of fiscal year 24 budget development timeline. And it looks like we have the timeline provided in front of us. Do we have a motion? And a second. Joe, any discussion on this?
So I'll just let people know that I sort of went off of the one from last year and the year before. I didn't do anything different or fancy with it.
And I know in years past, we've had to be careful around breaks and vacations, so I'm assuming that we checked those.
Yes, and that was originally why some of the board meetings changed back in August when we had to redo dates, because some of them landed during vacations.
All those in favor? 8.7, consideration and approval of Finance Committee recommendation to purchase a new transportation van with insurance money, and this was the area that Gabby spoke on a little while ago. Do we have a motion? Did we have an actual motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we were talking about this in finance, that the motion needs to be specific to which vehicle we're purchasing. So we've got several bids from several different dealers, and we're looking to move forward with the lowest price option, which is Lee. So I think the motion should say something to the effect of, let's move to purchase the vehicle from Lee. Along those lines.
VIN number.
Yeah, VIN number, yeah, right. Yeah.
Teresa, do you want me to read that, the make and model and the price tag, or?
I don't think we need that.
No,
I think
we need
it's
any of that?
They were, it was Lee, what were the bids did we get from Lee?
I have that.
Yeah. I put my packet somewhere else, so I can.
One from Central Maine Motors, one from Bodwell Chrysler, one from Central Maine Chrysler, and one from Lee. And Lee was the cheapest.
Are you clear on the motion?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Crystal, was that you for the second?
Or,
Okay.
She said.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Item 8.8, first reading and acceptance of revised policy DIEA, MSAD 52, student activity accounts, SAA guidelines. Do we have a motion?
so moved.
Second? Discussion.
Has it been said at the full board that these recommendations, the edits come from the audit report? I know you guys talked about it in the policy committee, but.
Yes, it has now.
Because it came from the previous audit report that needed to be updated, just so you know.
All those in favor? Thank you. 8.9, first reading and acceptance of revised policy JKE, MSAD 52, expulsion of students, and JKE-R-MSAD 52, expulsion guidelines. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second from Kyle. Any discussion or explanation of change?
So do you want me to explain the change?
Please.
This is because there was a change in law around expulsion.
And notice that it hadn't been updated when we actually had an expulsion hearing. So
Correct.
that's when we were like, oh, we've got to pull that back up. I will just say that I referred to the Maine School Management draft policy during that process to make sure that even though our policy was a little bit behind, we were following the latest guidelines, so.
Thank you for that. All those in favor? Thank you. 8.10, first reading and acceptance of revised policy GBGB, workplace bullying.
This actually shouldn't say revised, it should be new.
Okay.
Just sorry.
Okay, I was wondering about
Motion
that. So moved.
and a second. Tammy? Any discussion?
Explanation as well, if there's.
Yes, this is now a new law, and it was recommended by Drummond and Woodson that we put this into policy.
Okay.
And it actually came up in a conversation around a particular incident that had occurred in one of the schools.
Thank you. All those in favor? 11, discussion and consideration of request for the Curriculum and Policy Committee to review policy GCI, professional staff development opportunities. Do we have a motion? And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion.
So I was going to offer a little bit of context around that.
This was reviewed in 2014, but we don't usually have to be approved for curriculum and policy to review a policy, do we?
So this came from the previous meeting where there was a motion to amend the policy, but the motion was rescinded pending that it be put on here for a discussion item. Okay, do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why it's here.
Okay.
Let's see. Jan, are you still plugged into the,
I'm not, no, but it may have changed channel.
oh, sorry about that, Jeff. I've known that.
Gotta change cable over.
Sorry.
They charge by the hour.
I think he was getting bored sitting back there.
So you should be able to
This is the,
disconnect.
yes, conference room, okay. Oh, it's on Apple TV?
Yeah, you can connect
Oh,
from
I
Apple.
did, see, I was trying to follow the rules. Just see if I can do it. Okay, so I'm just going to provide a little context. I don't have a huge presentation, but this is just some of the language from the policy. So this policy governs the professional development that we provide to staff members. You all encourage employees to engage in programs and activities that will lead to professional growth and increased competence. I think, Tammy, you mentioned that phrase earlier, which I think is important. Superintendent and then administration through the superintendent is authorized to initiate programs and activities which are designed to follow the following guidelines. So the guidelines are provided there. They're the same ones from the policy that you have in front of you. What I think is important to recognize that, especially in the first one, providing structure through which staff members can stay abreast of new developments in their areas of specialty. I think it's important to remember that staff members' specialty includes students and educating the whole child. And so some of the presentations and professional development we engage in may not have to do with social studies, math, science. It may have to do with helping students to manage their behavior, helping students to engage collaboratively with other students. Those are things that are more soft skills, we would say, which lots of employers like and approve of. So sometimes that professional development falls into that. So I do just want to say, I think the policy is being discussed tonight because of a presentation that was given last April at Turner Elementary School, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to be clear with people, and I think, Tammy, you sort of set this up nicely. Why are we even talking about this topic in schools, right? Like, schools have not invented this topic. There was a state Supreme Court decision that then led to a change in Maine law. So when changes occur in law, schools need to respond to that. Schools need to make sure that teachers and administrators are up to speed on what that law means and how it applies to the work that we do with students. So I think I wanted to make sure that I gave that context because I just feel like sometimes in the conversation it feels like there's just randomly we're talking about LGBTQ students or transgender students just for just any reason at all. But there are very specific things that happen in Maine that have impacted the work that we do with students who are covered by these changes in the law. The school board, lots of members of the school board participated in Drummond-Woodsum controversial topic training. where they went over the Maine Human Rights Act that prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation, which was amended to include gender identity and expression. Sort of guarantees that transgender students are generally permitted to participate in school programs and activities in accordance with their gender identity. Our school policies make clear that the mission of the schools is to create a safe, nurturing educational environment for every student, all students. Under the Maine Human Rights Act, schools may not separate or segregate transgender expansive students regardless of community sentiment to the contrary or safety concerns. That is just part of the law. Under the Maine Human Rights Commission, students may not tolerate a hostile educational environment or working environment for staff, so in both cases. And then the law that requires us to respond and not tolerate injurious hazing, bullying, or harassment. So I think those are things that are always on our radar all the time when we are trying to make sure that our buildings meet the needs of the students that walk in our door. Because we will take every kid that walks in our door. It does not matter who that child is, where they come from. They are our student, and we are obligated to educate them. It is our moral and ethical obligation, and to do it within the confines of the law. So in the case of this particular presentation, Teresa was acting as the interim principal at Turner Elementary School. Teachers approached her wanting information about how to work and what it means, what transgender students are, what that means, and understanding more about it. So she worked with a highly qualified trainer who has been working with this school district since 2020, whose qualifications have been presented to this board before. He's provided many, many professional development opportunities around mental health to staff members since the pandemic began. He provided a 1-hour introductory training for staff that was a general sort of, what does this mean? What are these terms? And then Eben also decided that that was an important thing for his staff to participate in. Eben, I'd like you to just share how you came to have the same presentation in your school this fall.
Yeah, so in June, mid-June, Derek and I participated in a webinar with Drummond and Woodsum around LGBTQ issues with students and staff, and we've had the entire staff had that sort of training before, but it's been a long time, and I tried to find it in my calendar. I couldn't even find it. It's been so long. So when Derek and I attended the training in June, it was obvious that things have evolved over time. And in addition to that, I also had some requests from staff to update our training in that particular area. So I reached out to Teresa and asked her about Chris, got his contact information. I called him, he and I talked about it. And he had some introductory information to share with staff. He provided some guidance where Drummond Woodsum talked with Derek and I around like the legal aspects of it. Chris was more around the implication of it and how to implement things and just how to respond. And he spent probably more time answering questions than he did on his presentation. Ended up skipping most of his slides and just answering questions. It was exceptionally well received by the staff. They were very appreciative of the opportunity to talk with him, and I think it has made a big impact on just everybody's understanding of where we currently are.
So this is just the title slide of the presentation. It's the same one that was held up at the beginning of the meeting. And I'm happy to provide the slides to board members if they so choose, but that was the presentation. So I'm just going to end with my own personal experience in this area. I try to go by this motto: we all do the best we can until we know better, and then when we know better, we do better. So I can look back in my career since 1993 when I first started teaching here and think of students that I interacted with and had in my classroom that I did not understand. I did not understand who they were, why they presented themselves the way that they did. I didn't have the language for it, and could not have possibly really done anything thoughtful in helping them to feel included in the school. But as an administrator, I've worked with parents whose children are gay or transgender, and they are 100% fearful for the safety of their children. Every parent I've ever met with. And not all those parents were on the same page. One parent would come in, the other parent wouldn't. This is a very difficult issue, but they are all very scared for the safety of their children. And that weighs very heavily on me. That weighs very heavily on every administrator who runs all of these buildings. Our feelings are not relevant here because we have children in our building that we have to keep safe. So I think Teresa and I 100% stand by this presentation, would do it again, have done it again, recommended it to Evan, and I would suggest that the policy leads to our professional judgment, what teachers need and what the best way to do that is. And so that was the information that I wanted to provide you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Anthony?
So, thank you. I just like to point out at the outset here that there is an implication, I think, in the introduction to this that implies that the subject matter of LGBTQ plus awareness is somehow unsavory, and that is not the case. It just so happens that this presentation has problems with it that I thought should be addressed so that those problems are not encountered in the future. And I don't think that any of the proposed amendments to the policy do anything to discriminate against gay people or trans people or anybody else to endanger their safety. In fact, I think that this is intended to increase the safety of our students in our schools. If we turn to page 10 of this presentation, I don't know that you have it up there to share, but I can quote from this. Responding to a student who comes out to you. School policy, as one of our members of the public read to us earlier today, is very clear on how we are to respond to this. Or I'm sorry, not we, but our staff. And yet this tells our teachers in a professional development workshop to commit to finding resources and learning together and to listen and offer open-ended questions instead of following the policy that states specifically to be supportive, yet push them to, direct them to a qualified guidance staff, and to keep your comments on the subject of their school performance. So the appropriate thing to advise a teacher to say is, I'm very honored that you have felt comfortable sharing this with me. I want to make you understand that, feel reassured that that will have no bearing on your success in my class. I will treat you just as I treat every other student. But that is not what is said in here. Further, this goes on to represent things in partisan ways, such as page 13, I'm sorry.
Can I interrupt, Anthony? I just want to make sure the discussion we're having is regarding this policy and
It is regarding this policy.
and not the presentation. So I think the motion on the table right now is if we want to recommend this to go towards our curriculum and policy committee for revision.
Yes.
And I understand why you're giving me background, but I don't think we need to go through the actual presentation.
I understand that, but I just want to make sure that this body understands, and anybody who's watching from the public understands, that none of my objections to this program or my suggested amendments to the policy have anything to do with discrimination against these students.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I support your sentiment, Jessica. I mean, when I'm looking at the motion, it's to consider the policy associated with how professional development opportunities are selected. And I think we've come well beyond that discussion, I feel, in many ways. My curiosity is in what ways would changing this policy, if we were to revisit it, how would that, what kind of changes, right now this leaves much of the selection of these opportunities in the hands of our superintendent, which seems entirely appropriate. And I'm curious, what kinds of changes were you thinking about considering?
Right, I enumerated those at the last meeting, but I'm happy to share them again if I have the chair's permission.
Absolutely.
So, one, I think that the subject of professional development opportunities should be announced publicly, and the materials should be allowed to be inspected. Materials such as this used in such presentations should be allowed to be inspected by the public. I think that the presentation should not undermine school policy. I think that that is very fair. We should not be hiring people, paying them money to advise our staff to do things that contradict school policy. And I think that professional development should be focused on improving academic performance. I further think, and this I did not suggest last week, but I think that professional development on controversial or sensitive subjects should be amended to conform to the spirit of policy IMB, which is our policy about teaching such subjects. It provides guidelines for the teachers, and I think that professional development ought to conform to the same standards.
Thank you. Anybody else who has not weighed in?
Yeah.
Thank you, Tammy.
You know, I've been, over the last few weeks, well, months, actually been trying to read policies. And one of the things that I do notice is that there's adopted, revised, reviewed, and the dates are all there. I do think that, I know that we have to visit those that are urgent, that are just, you know, on the table, new laws, and that sort of thing. But as I go through all the different policies, I think it is important that they be reviewed on a regular basis. You know, in the course, you know, after 5 years, things have changed in our culture as we are hearing at these board meetings. And I think it just behooves us to take the time to look at our policies, to weigh what the current laws are and what our parents and our teachers are asking for, and see what we can come together with as far as the policy goes. I mean, this policy reads really quite well, and you know, on the outset, I don't really have any issues with it. But when you start listening to a lot of the different concerns, I think that it just is a wise thing to visit this and perhaps other policies that are in our handbook, because there are a lot and the times are changing. So I think it would be my recommendation, personally, that we look at how we go about reviewing policies and doing it on a regular basis.
I wonder, Teresa, I know don't you keep a spreadsheet and a list of, like, you want to talk a little bit about your method?
Yes, so we do have a process, and you're absolutely right. This policy has not been reviewed, and some of the policies that have come before the committee this year are from 2013, 2014. So it is in the pipeline for a review process. I can tell you, I have checked the main school management. There's no change to the recommended policy that I always provide to the committee.
Anybody else who's not spoken? All those in favor of the motion, and can we one more time review? So the motion was to make sure that I say this right, correct? That we were going to bring this policy to curriculum and policy for discussion and possible revision, correct? All those in favor of doing so? Opposed?
So yes.
I did not count it.
So it's 4 to 4, right?
Okay.
They'd rather do that.
What is lost? I'm cursing us every time I bring this folder out. All right, we're going to do this together.
So because it was 4 to 4 vote, it goes to a weighted vote. That's what she's doing now.
Okay. Joe was yes. Crystal was yes. Jessica was yes. Oh, wait, no, it's the other way. Oh, my God. Okay, you guys all knew what I meant, right? I need another sheet.
Numbers.
Thing you have not.
117, turn 115, leads is 97.
What are those numbers, maybe?
No. Absent. Yes, yes.
I'm sorry,
Is he looking for explanation on the weighted vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll do my best to explain it. I wish Betsy was here because she could do a better job. But each elected official has a certain number of, like, I think it's based on residents in your town.
Yeah.
And so a vote from Leeds may count for a certain amount versus a vote from Green might count for a certain amount. So when we get close, they become weighted votes, and so they tabulate them that way. So she has a cheat sheet that kind of shows which vote counts. Cheat sheet. Bad wording.
All right, so the no vote in the weighted vote is 400. Oh, okay. The no vote in the weighted vote was 418. The yes vote in the weighted vote was 466. So the motion passes.
So moving on to item 8.12, to enter into executive session to discuss teacher contract and support staff contract pursuant to 1 MRSA 405 6D. Are we going into the library for that? Yes, okay. And so is there going to be a,
We need to, there'll be a motion afterwards.
there's a motion, so we'll return after that.
I think we have most wanted